The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
As to ending the weaponization of justice, we learned that former FBI secretly investigated you and your colleagues. Why? They wanted to take President Trump off the playing field.
New revelations revealed about a former FBI probe into sitting senators. Plus,
and we want this to happen, and there's more than a hint of optimism in the air, even in this sad day.
Marking 2 years since the horrific events of October 7th and the following war in Gaza, can the parties finally come together to end the bloodshed? And then storm number 9 in the Atlantic, what we know about the latest tropical storm in this hurricane season. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we begin with U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi on Capitol Hill today for an hours-long hearing touching on many topics, from the use of the National Guard to cleaning up the streets of sanctuary cities to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation to the appearance of political retribution of the Trump administration by the Department of Justice. But hanging over the entire hearing was the revelation by Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley last night that during the Biden administration, the FBI spied on at least 8 sitting Republican senators and a representative during its Arctic frost investigation as the basis for Special Counsel Jack Smith's election interference case against Trump. Republicans have called this a weaponized Justice Department, but Democrats say this was simply a prosecutor doing the job. Let's get straight on over to national correspondent Christine Frizzell with the details.
The discovery from inside the FBI being called disturbing and outrageous.
When taken in context with widespread government weaponization against Trump and conservatives in the last decade, the conduct's arguably is worse than Watergate.
Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley sharing this document, listing names of people whose personal cell phone information was searched for, quote, tolling data, potentially to determine their locations and who they communicated with in the 2 days before and 1 day after the January 6th riots at the U.S. Capitol. The 8 Republican senators and 1 House member say they were spied on when that information was collected and analyzed by the FBI as part of its Arctic frost investigation.
It exposes every call we made, every call coming into us and every call that we placed going out. So it also exposes all of that information. And why they did it is what we want to know.
Their questions Republicans say should be part of a new investigation into Special Counsel Jack Smith, pointing fingers during a hearing on Capitol Hill.
We already know that this was ordered by the special prosecutor Jack Smith, who reported directly to the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. And we know that Jack Smith was on his witch hunt because he was directed to do so by the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Attorney General Pam Bondi responding she can't reveal too much now, but will in the future.
We will be looking at all aspects of this, and I have talked to Director Patel at length about
and
this.
You're going to...
Now, Democrats insist Jack Smith was simply doing his job, conducting a thorough criminal investigation into 2020 election interference and whether anyone, namely Donald Trump, sought to block the peaceful transfer of power. Jack Smith's investigation ended, followed by his resignation shortly after Trump won in 2024. Dee Dee?
Yeah, as you just illustrated, Christine, some fiery moments today. What's next? Do we know?
Yeah, well, we can expect Republicans to continue to say they're the victims here, that they were unfairly targeted by Jack Smith. But what we don't know yet is what Democrats' message is going to be on this and whether they may offer up some evidence or good reason as to why these Republicans, arguably all close supporters and allies to Donald Trump, could have perhaps been legitimately targeted as part of this federal investigation. Remember, there was talk of fake electors and other plans by Trump loyalists to try to block the certification of the election of Joe Biden back in early 2021.
Christine Frizzell reporting tonight from Capitol Hill. Thank you. Throughout the hearing today, Attorney General Bondi sparred with Democrats. She refused to answer questions on the Epstein investigation, the Department of Justice's role in the National Guard being used in Democratic-run cities, or the charges against former FBI Director James Comey. She told Democratic senators she is keeping the White House out of DOJ investigations.
President Trump is the most transparent president in American history. And I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years.
On the House side, the Oversight Committee revealing today new declassified but redacted emails that show then Vice President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor Colin Kahl urged the CIA not to release an internal intelligence report back in 2016. The information indicated that the then Ukrainian president's administration believed their 2015 meeting with Vice President Biden was done in connection to, quote, corrupt business dealings in the Biden family. According to the document, Ukrainian officials saw the visit as a double standard within the U.S. government towards the matters of corruption and political power. The House Oversight Committee has continued to investigate both Biden as vice president and as president to determine if Biden's activities compromised national security and whether or not he was able to lead the country with impartiality. The former president has vehemently denied all of the accusations against him and his family. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem has arrived in Portland, Oregon to tour an ICE facility. You see it behind me right here. Now, this facility has been at the center of sometimes violent anti-ICE protests for months now. Those protests were part of President Trump's rationale to push for the National Guard to be deployed in the city. State and city officials claim they have the protests under control. Noem was just in Illinois, where Texas National Guard troops have arrived against the wishes of Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. National correspondent Kelly Gaskins has the latest.
Hundreds of National Guard troops arriving in Chicago Tuesday, sent by President Trump to crack down on crime.
Chicago is a great city where there's a lot of crime. And if the governor can't do the job, we'll do the job.
The troops arriving despite strong objections from local and state leaders who tried to block their arrival in court.
Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities.
But a judge allowed it to move forward for now.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Durbin.
Attorney General Pam Bondi pressed on the issue by Illinois Senator Dick Durbin during a hearing Tuesday.
Were you consulted by the White House before they deployed National Guard troops to cities in the United States?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations. I wish you love Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
The deployment of the Guard comes after a weekend of escalating tensions between demonstrators and ICE agents. Agents fired on a suspect who allegedly tried to run them over with a vehicle. The woman was reportedly armed with a semi-automatic weapon and was already on law enforcement's radar for doxing federal agents online. She's since been taken into custody by the FBI. As the protests intensified, DHS accusing Chicago police leaders of ordering officers to stand down and not respond to requests to help Border Patrol agents as a mob of demonstrators surrounded them, pointing out a dispatch log from Saturday that states no units will respond to this. Chicago's chief of police denying the accusations. President Trump has floated the idea of using the Insurrection Act to deploy the U.S. military to Chicago. It's a rarely used but potent federal power for emergencies, the legality of which has largely been untested in the courts. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins, reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Meantime, in Tennessee, the FBI's Nashville field office says in just 1 week of federal deployment of the National Guard in Memphis has resulted in at least 132 arrests, 30 guns, 23 drug seizures, as you see right there. Officials say this crime crackdown could last weeks, even months in Memphis. Illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border have dropped to the lowest yearly level since the 70s. According to the Department of Homeland Security, agents recorded nearly 238,000 illegal migrant arrests at the southern border this past fiscal year. It is the lowest total since 1970, when there were roughly 202,000 arrests. Most of this year's arrests were during the last few months of the Biden administration. The government shutdown is now 1 week long, and the standstill remains in effect. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says the Senate will continue to vote on the same two measures that have failed repeatedly until one is passed. One is a Democratic motion to add health care benefits onto the current federal budget. The other is the Republican clean continuing resolution that has passed the House. But as the shutdown drags on, a debate over back pay for furloughed workers has emerged.
There are some legal analysts who are saying that that may not be appropriate or necessary in terms of the law requiring that back pay be provided. So I'm sure that'll be there will be a lot of discussion about that.
And the law is clear. Every single furloughed federal employee is entitled to back pay. Period, full stop. The law is clear, and we will make sure that that law is followed.
The White House Office of Management and Budget argues there is a loophole in the 2019 law signed by President Trump that says all furloughed government workers are indeed entitled to missed paychecks. OMB says back pay is subject to the enactment of appropriations ending the shutdown, meaning new congressional legislation would be necessary. Meantime, President Trump today saying back pay or not, if the government isn't funded soon, large cuts will be coming.
Because of the shutdown, which I think they made a big mistake, we're able to take out billions and billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse, and they've handed it, on a silver platter. If this keeps going on, it'll be substantial, and a lot of those jobs will never come back. But you're going to have a lot closer to a balanced budget.
The shutdown is also putting pressure on airports that were already dealing with air traffic controller shortages. Flights to and from Nashville International Airport are now reduced due to those shortages. The change took effect this afternoon. Airport officials said the FAA notified them earlier today. Passengers are told to check their flight status with their airline. Nationwide, the Transportation Secretary warned there's been a slight uptick in air traffic controllers calling out sick. Controllers and TSA staff are required to work during the shutdown, but won't get paid until it ends. Today, flights are going relatively smoothly so far. 3 people are injured after a medical helicopter crashed on a highway in California yesterday, according to officials. You can see right here the chaotic scene. The Sacramento Fire Department said the helicopter landed upside down and a pilot, nurse, and paramedic, they were hospitalized in critical condition. No one on the highway was hurt. The NTSB and FAA said they are investigating this crash. The Supreme Court is considering a case on conversion therapy for LGBTQ minors. The justices seem likely to side with a Christian counselor who argues Colorado's ban on conversion therapy violates her First Amendment rights. The state claims conversion therapy, which attempts to change someone's sexual orientation, is scientifically discredited and harmful. Coming up next, what's happening right now in the negotiations to end the 2-year war between Israel and Hamas. Then listeria warning, the subscription meal kits you'll want to steer clear of to avoid getting seriously sick. And new rules for helicopters as 3 major airports work to make the airspace safer and prevent crashes. We're back in 90 seconds. Marking 2 years of war, October 7, 2023, thousands of Hamas-led militants attacked Southern Israel's army bases, farming communities, and an outdoor music festival killing about 1,200 people, mainly civilians. They also abducted more than 250 people. In response, Israel declared war on the Gaza Strip. Many buildings throughout Gaza that were linked to the vast tunnel system used for military purposes have been destroyed. Most of the 2.2 million people living in Gaza have been displaced from their homes. Tens of thousands have died during this war. But peace could be on the horizon as the two sides continue negotiations today on a U.S. brokered peace plan. Among the issues being worked on is the release of the 48 remaining hostages, both dead and alive, in exchange for 250 Palestinians serving criminal sentences, as well as 17 prisoners of the war. Calls for Hamas to fully disarm. Hamas has repeatedly been against this, saying their weapons are integral to their resistance. A board of peace. In other words, who will be in charge of the enclave after this war ends? Israel has been opposed to the Palestinian Authority retaking control. Hamas has been against outsiders being in charge. Hamas also wants guarantees that Israel won't attack current leadership outside of Gaza when the war is over. 3 of the negotiating Hamas members were targeted by Israel for assassination in Qatar last month. President Trump also met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the White House today, working to hammer out a comprehensive trade deal between the countries. The president praising the Canadian premier and compared their relationship to a brotherly competition.
It's a complicated agreement, more complicated maybe than any other agreement we have on trade, because, we have natural conflict. We also have mutual love. We have great love for each other. I love this. I love Canada and the people of Canada. And Mark feels the same way about here.
And the two also laughed about the countries joining one another. In the spring, President Trump repeatedly called for Canada to become the 51st state. Today, after saying it again, he laughed it off and said, "I'm only kidding." Storms are brewing in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. We are tracking it all. In the Atlantic, Tropical Storm Jerry has formed and is expected to become a hurricane. It's headed towards the Caribbean. Rain from Jerry will reach the Leeward Islands on Thursday. The National Hurricane Center is also tracking Hurricane Priscilla off the coast of Mexico. It is expected to bring heavy rain. Parts of northern Utah are still cleaning up from the historic weekend rainfall as well as the flooding. Salt Lake City got the second most rain in its history on Saturday. Officials say storm drains were overwhelmed. The National News Desk, Christian Sita, reports from Tooele County, which also got hit hard.
When flash flooding swept through parts of Tooele County, local emergency crews jumped into action. But as the water recedes, the focus now shifts to long-term recovery.
We always do an after-action review with our internal teams, and then we also include our community partners to make sure that we've hit all the key points that we could, and also that we're ready for the future.
That preparation includes pre-storm maintenance and rapid response, but when water hits home, that's when crews like Disaster Repair Team steps in. The restoration company handled several homes in Stansbury Park, dealing with soaked carpet, damaged drywall, and hours of mud removal.
If it's an outside source like the rainwater or something like that, or a big storm, that's usually when they'll say you needed that flood insurance, and they won't cover it.
Jake Graham says many homeowners don't realize until it's too late. Standard home insurance won't cover weather-related flooding, and in a 100-year storm like the one northern Utah experienced, prevention is just as critical as cleanup.
What can people do in the first 24 hours after a flood while they're waiting for experts?
Remove as much water as you can. Like, move the water, prevent the water as much as you can. If you can shut off your water main, do that right away. If it's coming from outside, I would recommend trying to dig trenches, having some plywood ready that you can just drop in front of that window.
The county says it's now focused on cleaning storm drains and clearing retention water ponds and reviewing what worked.
Because we always know that there's places to learn and grow.
OpenAI says suspected Chinese government operatives and criminals are abusing ChatGPT. A new OpenAI report includes several examples, including a Chinese-speaking user getting ChatGPT to help write surveillance plans to track people in China. Another user used the chatbot to help promote a tool that supposedly monitors social media accounts. Some HelloFresh ready-made meals could be contaminated with listeria, according to the USDA. The cheesy pulled pork pepper pasta and the unstuffed peppers with ground turkey contain spinach that tested positive for the bacteria. They both come in 10.1-ounce containers. The establishment numbers and lot codes right there on your screen. If you have them, you're urged not to eat them. You can now buy weight loss drugs at Costco pharmacies. Novo Nordisk, which owns Ozempic and Wegovy, says a 1-month supply of the drugs at the discount retailer will cost $499. That's less than what Ozempic and Wegovy typically retail for, roughly $1,300 to $1,600. According to GoodRx, some Costco members can get additional discounts. Well, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and a new American Cancer Society report says around 33,600 women will be diagnosed with lobular breast cancer this year. The report's author says we need more research into this kind of breast cancer, which develops in milk-producing glands.
We need to distinguish this cancer in clinical trials so that we can find more effective treatments, because incidence rates are actually increasing quite steeply, more steeply than for other types of breast cancer.
She says the tumors are more linear, don't form a lump, and can be spread out so they can be harder to detect. Women should look out for certain symptoms like hardening or dimpling of the skin. Coming up, the oldest casino in Las Vegas is embracing the future with an all-virtual gaming floor. How people feel about the change, we'll explain right after this. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start here in Washington, D.C., where airports have new flying rules.
The FAA recently announced it is making some rule changes near Reagan National Airport permanent regarding where helicopters can and cannot fly. And it tweaked a few rules, too. Also, it changed helicopter rules at BWI Marshall and Dulles. At BWI Marshall, the FAA moved a route for helicopters near I-95 to the northwest side of the interstate. The reason is to keep helicopters further away from planes taking off and landing at BWI. Meanwhile, at Dulles, the FAA says helicopters using a route that takes them over several runways now have to fly higher.
They really want to tighten up the rules and regulations and make sure that everybody knows their lanes, knows their routes, and keep what happened from January from ever happening again.
You know, Steve, we're pretty excited.
Golden Gate owner Derek Stevens is all in with the latest high-tech gaming at the oldest casino in Las Vegas. Think of it as rolling the digital dice. And so far,
it's about double what our projections were, so we feel pretty happy about it.
Stevens says the move toward electronic gaming isn't new. It's just been under the radar. Stevens says all electronic gaming at Golden Gate is part of an overall update tied to a marketing campaign called The Night Starts Here to attract more tourists and locals.
We do miss the old, but we've kind of welcomed the new.
Making it a little bit more modern has definitely opened up for the younger generation.
Amongst the peppers and cabbages, kids are having fun while learning new skills. Since 2009, the Highland Youth Garden has created a positive impact.
We cultivate smiles, not only from the community, but from the kids that come here.
Paul Kemmer oversees the garden and gets to experience the joy of teaching the next generation. Since May, about 11,000 pounds of produce have been given out for free.
Valuable skills. Love to see it. Coming up next here, the groundbreaking discovery made by the scientists who just received this year's Nobel Prize in Physics. We'll be right back in 90 seconds. Three scientists whose research led to quantum computing now have the 2025 Nobel Prize in Physics. John Clark, Michel Devereux, and John Martinez discovered quantum mechanical tunneling in an electrical circuit. Clark said their work allowed for the invention of the cell phone. He added that he never imagined their research in the 80s would lead to a Nobel Prize. And in the NFL, division rivals are coming together to help each other out. The Cleveland Browns in trading veteran quarterback Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals. ESPN reporting that the two teams are also swapping late-round draft picks as part of this deal. Flacco expected to start in place of injured Bengals QB Joe Burrow, who is recovering from a toe injury. The Bengals have lost 3 straight games during Burrow's absence. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. Coming up at 10, our team is standing by in Portland for the very latest live coverage of continued protests. Plus, I speak to a spokesperson from the State Department about the impact of the government shutdown on foreign policy. I'm Dee Dee Gatton here in Washington. From all of us here, thank you for watching. We'll see you again tonight.